We begin the readout tonight with breaking news, and it does not sound good for one Donald J. Trump. The New York Times is reporting that prosecutors in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office are signaling that criminal charges for the former president are likely to come for his role in the hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. The Times reports the prosecutors offered Mr. Trump the chance to testify next week before the grand jury that has been hearing evidence in the potential case, according to 4 people with knowledge of the matter. Such offers almost always indicate an indictment is close. It would be unusual for the district attorney, Alvin J. Bragg, to notify a potential defendant without ultimately seeking charges against him. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has declined comment. Now, if those charges are made, it would be the first indictment of a former United States president and the first time that Trump, who has faced numerous criminal investigations, would be charged with a crime. As you may remember, that $130,000 payment to Ms. Daniels was made in the final days of the 2016 presidential election by then-Trump lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen on Trump's behalf. Cohen ultimately went to jail for his role in that payment and has been a cooperating witness ever since. Just this week, Cohen met with the DA's office for the 19th time in preparation to meet with the grand jury as soon as next week. And joining me now is former Senator Doug Jones of Alabama. He is currently a distinguished senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Charles Coleman, former Brooklyn prosecutor, civil rights attorney, and MSNBC legal analyst. And Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor and legal affairs columnist for Politico magazine. My brain trust tonight. I appreciate you all being here. Senator Jones, I do want to go to you first because this is actually a big deal if it happens. But I want to take a step back and say that if is the operative word here. But the fact that you've now had Trump invited to speak before the grand jury, per the Times, it says something that isn't good for Trump. Please explain.
Well, you know, look, Joe, I'm going to take a little bit different approach. What it clearly says that this investigation is nearing the end one way or another. It clearly is coming to the end. That's kind of the last step. I think in most cases, a lot of cases, you would think that it would be unusual that you invite somebody and then not charge. However, we really don't know what's going on in that grand jury. When Michael Cohen has been there, you got to admit, this has been a crazy matter. The president's lawyer's gone to jail. Stormy Daniels' lawyer has gone to jail. Yep. It is a sordid chapter in American history. So we really don't know, but it doesn't look good, I think. But at the same time, this grand jury may just want to hear from him to close these books. We're going to have to wait and see and let them do their job.
Yeah, I mean, from your point of view, Charles Coleman Jr., it's unusual at all for a president to be in this position. For this president, though, there is some irony, you know, given the fact that we are talking about his involvement in January 6th. We're talking about his, you know, the schemes to put forward fake electors. We're talking about Fonnie Willis is investigating him for potentially trying to undermine the election in the state of Georgia. Tish James has a separate investigation of him. There are all sorts of investigations from alleged tax fraud, not paying taxes. All kinds of things are here. However, it does seem that the ripest political case, I didn't even mention the Jack Smith investigation into January 6th, it does seem like the ripest case that he is dealing with is the Stormy Daniels case. What do you make of this revelation by the Times?
Well, Joy, as you've just indicated, this has been a proverbial foot race between prosecutors to see who is going to catch the gingerbread man first. And it seems as though out of nowhere, Alvin Bragg, who was all but out of the race by his own decision previously, is now taking the lead. What I will say is that while he may seem closest, this case in comparison to the others does not appear to be strongest. I do think that it is a strong indication that Alvin Bragg is leaning toward charging Donald Trump when you're talking about this indictment. But let's be clear and understand that the grand jury still, upon hearing the information, I believe Senator Jones was alluding to this, actually has to vote for a true bill before he can indict. Now, of course, prosecutors will tell you that you can get an indictment in most cases on a ham sandwich if you try hard enough. And so I don't necessarily see that being a huge hurdle. But what I will say is that even after an indictment with an eventual prosecution, we need to understand that Michael Cohen is a witness with significant credibility issues. And so when when you're thinking about prosecuting this case, there are a number of hurdles, not to mention very quickly that Alvin Bragg had previously looked at this legal theory before, and he decided not to prosecute. This has not been something that just fell on his desk. He's explored this for a little while now. So the question will become, what is different now that you didn't know then that you're making this decision to move forward?
Yeah, that, I guess, has been my issue, too, Renato Margiotti. I mean, to the point where two of his prosecutors quit, saying that they felt there was a strong case and that Alvin Bragg did not move forward on it. You now have had some kind of turn in the weather, but let's talk about the strength of the case itself. We do know that Michael Cohen, strong witness or not, was not having an affair with Stormy Daniels. We know that for sure. We know that Donald Trump was the person who had an interest in Stormy Daniels not talking about that affair because he was running for president. And we also know that Michael Cohen took out a loan, paid Stormy Daniels $130,000, and then got a reimbursement check. We've seen pictures of the check. There it is with Donald Trump's magic marker signature on it, reimbursing him for the exact amount that was paid to Stormy Daniels. And we know that Michael Cohen, for doing that, in terms of that being a campaign finance violation, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for a crime in which Donald Trump was named as the unindicted co-conspirator. The person that was named, that was unnamed in it, was Donald J. Trump. He served 13 and a half months for that. So I think that when people look at it, whatever you might think of Michael Cohen as a witness, it is true that he went to prison for something he didn't do. And so fairness would indicate that the person he did it for is at least as culpable as he is.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Trump is ultimately the driver of this scheme. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I think that, and I think the commentary that was just given a moment ago, which I actually agree with, is just simply that under the, in terms of New York law, there's going to be some challenges in this case. Now, one thing I think won't be a challenge is the misdemeanor charge. The making a false statement in a business record, I think that's much stronger. The question is, and the challenge for Alvin Bragg and his team is going to be, how can you turn that into a felony? And ultimately, the issue is going to be, was there a violation of New York election law here? And that means that was this $130,000 payment a contribution, effectively a contribution to the Trump campaign? Because this was really in the midst of an election, and they needed to keep it quiet in order to make sure he won the 2016 election. The Trump team's going to try to say, hey, he was doing this because he loves Melania so much, he didn't want to hurt her. That, probably not going to appeal to most people. The question is, there one juror who that would potentially appeal to, that argument. And that's,
I mean, and I want to go back to you, Senator Jones, because, look, I mean, you would know better than most about making difficult cases. I mean, you were prosecuting Klansmen in Alabama. It ain't easy to do that, okay, given the fact that these folks were walking on murders for decades, and you managed to do that. So, but there is a principle. I am not a lawyer, but I understand from fellow lawyers and friends that are lawyers that prosecutors don't bring a case they don't think they can win. It's not a question of whether you can get an indictment, which is Charles Coleman Jr. has been very correct in saying you can indict. I've sat on grand juries. Most everybody gets indicted, okay? But it's the question of, can you win this case? And with Donald Trump, it is very different. This guy has been Teflon legally. He's gotten away with everything. I don't know if he's paid taxes since the 90s, and he's gotten away with it. And so the question then becomes, for a prosecutor like Alvin Bragg, who did seem to walk back from it before, what would be the incentive structure that could have changed that said, you know what, I'm going to bring potentially first, before Fani Willis, before anyone else, a case that could be as difficult as this?
Well, Joy, that's a $64,000 question. I don't think any three of us could answer because we're not in that grand jury room. I think there was some pressure on him to take another look at the case. That's not always unusual when someone declines a case and there's something that pops up that's not in the public eye necessarily that comes to your attention. Say, OK, I'll take a look at it. But we're not present in the grand jury room. We haven't heard Michael Cohen testify. We haven't seen any responses from Stormy Daniels. We haven't seen any of that. So there's something there that gives him both some pause, but also the ability to go forward. And remember, this is not the first rodeo in terms of cases like this. Remember, John Edwards was indicted. It wasn't payments to a porn star, but he was indicted on similar type charges for payments to protect his presidential aspirations. So, and he was found not guilty, by the way. So I think there's a lot, and especially, and I've said this about all of the Donald Trump investigations. Anytime you've got Donald Trump and a former president of the United States, you have got to be extremely cautious. You've got to make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and you've got to have more than just a strong case. You've got to have it abundantly clear and a belief in your gut that this is a case that not only can you win, it's a case that needs to be brought. And it's going to be a pretty high bar. There's going to be a lot of great, I'd love to see the internal discussions going on about whether or not to bring this case.
Charles, you are nodding in agreement there. Your thoughts on that?
I've said this a very number of times on this platform and many others that, you know, when you come for the king, you cannot miss. Even if it is the former king, you started your lead in, Joy, talking about how this is basically uncharted water and unprecedented territory. And that's exactly right. There are a number of different considerations that Senator Jones just alluded to around a decision like this. And one of them is, quite frankly, there's an enormous amount of political pressure because we are entering into a presidential election year and a presidential election cycle with a former president who has already declared that he intends to run. So all of these factors come into play when you're talking about being able to prosecute him and being able to give him, quite frankly, as he is guaranteed by our Constitution, a fair trial in front of a jury of his peers. There are a litany of different considerations in terms of the complexity of actually trying a case like this, moving forward with the prosecution, guaranteeing him a fair trial that if you get a conviction on, will not be subject to appeal, and then be above all that, being able to get a conviction. So there's a lot of different pieces in a conversation like this that aren't usually present that Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, Jack Smith, and others have to take into account as they're making their decisions about how to move forward with some pretty strong evidence in a number of different instances, but that's just not where the conversation ends.